If AI tools are so transformative, then why does your workday look identical to how it did 5 years ago? With the same desk, the same long hours, and the same exhaustion. I was asking myself the same question 6 months ago, and I wanted to figure out a completely different way of working. I didn't want to just combine powerful new tools to keep working in the same way. I'm Zack Proser from WorkOS. We handle auth and identity for a lot of the AI tools that you know and love, such as OpenAI's ChatGPT and Cursor. For 14 years, I've been shipping production code. For a lot of that time, I thought that more productivity meant more monitors, longer hours, darker room. But something shifted when I started working at WorkOS. I had this unique vantage point. I could see how these tools were secured. I was experimenting with them daily, and I started to wonder, what if the question is not how do we get the best productivity out of these tools? What if the question is rather, how do we use these tools to free ourselves up? So I ran an experiment. Could I ship production code, not toy examples, but real, secure, tested production code while spending half of my day on mountain trails? Now I speak code into existence at 179 words per minute. I solve architecture problems on mile 3 of my trail hike. My preferred LLM knows my biometrics as well as my GitHub backlog. What if the best code that you write doesn't happen at your desk? What if your best architecture idea comes to you when you're on mile 2 of a trail hike? What if AI tools could free you up to do your work where you think best and not where you're supposed to sit? It's about orchestrating intelligence, artificial and your own, to get the job done in a way that suits you best. In this talk, I'm going to share with you everything that I've learned about combining AI tools together to live a better life as a developer.
Right now, I am excited to show you Wispr Flow. If you look over here, Wispr Flow is an OS X utility. It hangs out in the background, which means that it's always available for me to use in whatever application I might be in. So if I just start speaking naturally and holding down the function key that I had mapped to record dictation, and then I let go, then pretty quickly we get the correct words interpolated. And for that matter, it also works if I use technical terms such as OAuth 2.0, or if I use next.config.mjs. All of those values are correctly recognized against my own personal dialect even. We'll see in a second how this is extremely relevant when you're talking about tagging specific files by name in interfaces such as Cursor with your voice. And it allows you to move super quickly. The other thing I love about this is the hands-free dictation mode. This is the one that I find myself using the most. So you can see how this is an extremely powerful interface. It also works in any random form. It also works in ChatGPT.
Here's the first point synergy with using your voice. I like to use Claude Desktop as my second brain. That means it's connected not only to my Oura Ring, so it knows how I'm sleeping, how much physical activity I've gotten, my general health, if I'm even sick.
Claude, get me oriented for the day by reviewing my Oura data and also what's in Linear.
It's also connected to Linear, which provides a nice externality across conversations, right? So Claude has the ability to read and update my Linear issues, and Linear is used as a backing store or database for what's actually been done, the status of every given project, and I can file tickets as needed across personal, financial, and work-related projects. Now, I've intentionally given Claude the instructions to push back against me and to tell Claude that I tend to have eyes bigger than my stomach. I'm always going to want to push myself, and I need help with that tendency. So I've programmed the Claude project to use my biometric data and knowledge of what I've been up to recently to push back when needed, whenever I'm proposing going too hard and I actually need to rest. The reason I do this is so that I can now come to Claude using my headphones and my voice. I can verbally ventilate and dump everything on my mind, and Claude can immediately reconcile that block of text from my voice, check the Linear externality to see what has or hasn't actually been done in the world, and then help me devise a plan for moving to the next milestone. I no longer need to maintain the minutia of every ticket and item and calendar invite. I can go and do deep focus work for several hours, come back to Claude and say, here's what I got done, here's what I'm thinking about now. I had a couple of other project ideas that I want to capture, and I need to go take a break and eat lunch, and I want to figure out how to arrange the afternoon so that we can hit all of these points. And I probably also need to take a quick rest. And Claude can reconcile it with linear state updates. And in this way, be a much better assistant to me. It's very much plugged into the actual context that I'm working from as a human being. These next sections are all about leverage. What's the work that we can lift and shift to machines, such as software development or maintenance chores? And then how do we maximize that benefit by handling all the async offloading in the beginning of the day, giving us more opportunities to check in with our agents, even from the trail or toward the end of the day, to reorient and steer them.
Here's an example where using your voice can help you realize compound gains. This agentic coding space really exploded this year. OpenAI has Codex. Cursor has its own native tool, which it calls Cursor Agents. There's even Google Jewels. Even GitHub Copilot is getting in on the action. And these tools, really all work in a similar fashion. You first connect your GitHub organization to the tool and you grant access, and then you can choose any code base and any branch and even any number of attempts when you're making a request for a change. Find that by combining the ability to rapid fire my thoughts and also assign full context to these agents, just by speaking naturally and letting Wispr Flow capture everything, really helps me to move work that can be reliably done by machines. Are going to test and verify the application changes ourselves, but we also have confidence that a flagship model could take our instructions and figure out everything else it needs to figure out using the code base and the tools available to the model itself. So in order to maximize the benefit that I can derive from an agentic coding tool such as Codex or Copilot or Jules, the thing that I want to do is to identify which tasks are ideal for handing off to a machine, and by machine, a reasonably intelligent LLM, and which tasks are the ones that you want to be 100% focused on implementing yourself or very closely code reviewing. Types of tasks that slot in well for this kind of background maintenance are software development chores, essentially. So update this package version, which has been found to be insecure. Maybe I do some sneak security scanning and determine that my dependencies are out of date. So go and update these dependencies, or you'll find the copyright footer that's incorrectly done in a couple of pages and replace it. Or there's a very specific and discrete CSS issue that we can all point to in this page. And so I want you to go and fix just that page. In order to maximize the benefit that I get, I like to use the agentic tools up front in the beginning of the day. I like to go through my backlog and then assign out the various issues. This also makes for a really nice synergy with these agentic coding tools. So I'll just give you an example of what I might tend to type in. I've been thinking for a while about building a tiered system with my content so that it's, most content is free for everyone to access, but there's specific demos or highly crafted experiences that I want to ensure people are signed in for. And so I want to be able to mark a piece of content as saying someone is signed in. So there's going to be 3 tiers in this system, essentially. The other thing that I want is there to be a tier that is paid, so that the content could be free, sign in required, or sign up to the newsletter is required, and then paid is required. Right. So like increasing levels of intensity, essentially. Most of the content is all going to stay open and free, but I want the ability to turn certain things on and say that this now requires that you're signed into the site. So I want you to go and review how the next auth system works that's already installed in this application. And I want you to think about intelligently extending the sign-in permission system that we already have so that there's a tiered content system. Just as we saw before, Wispr Flow has done a pretty good job of taking my raw and turning it into some legible text. Just given what I've seen here and knowing what I already know about this particular application, I feel like this has a pretty good chance of working. So what happens when we actually use one of these agentic tools to fire off an agent in the background? Well, as you can see here, it is starting a container, and this container is actually a VM under the hood. So it's a virtual machine. And this has important implications for security because it's limiting the access and the blast radius to the underlying host system for where this infrastructure is running, where the actual job is running. But also there's an important interplay here with Git, because as we've connected GitHub and we're using Git as the root organizational layer, So when each one of these agents spins up, they will actually work on their own specific context. And that's in a specific branch and it's in a VM. And so it also prevents them from stepping on each other's work. All of this is to say that this is just a really lovely interface to allow you to rapid fire multiple tasks in the morning to agents. So that I'll also say, oh, hey, by the way, I noticed we don't have the 2025 copyright in the footer. Make sure you add that too. Boom. That task is now started. Simultaneously, we could say, okay, I'm not happy with the headlines for this demos page anymore. It's just too simple. It doesn't really speak to the value of the content that's being taught here. So instead, I want you, Codex agent, to use chain of thought. I want you to work backwards from the end goal, which is to give people the ideal page for learning machine learning concepts in an interactive and fun way. And then I want you to figure out the ideal headline and copy and description. And I want you to tweak the hero in the way that you think is ideal for achieving that goal. That's more ill-defined or exploratory task, but it's worth mentioning. I can fire this off as essentially a lottery ticket. I could even ask for 4 versions here, and then I could say, go. And then when I hit the trail here in a little bit and do my daily hike, these are the actual agents that are working on my behalf that I can go and check and see what they're doing. Let's take a look at what one of these background agents actually looks like under the hood. Codex, like others, does a really nice job of giving you very detailed logs so you can see exactly how your environment's been set up, the actual code and page and every file that the agent accessed while it was building up the context it needed in order to complete your task. And we have this excellent, auditable history. As I can go back and see, okay, if I wanted to replicate exactly what the agent did, or if I want to understand how it arrived at that conclusion, I can go back and kind of spy on a session, essentially the same way that I would peer over the shoulder of a colleague and see, okay, well, what's in your terminal history? What did you do there? Many of these agentic background and coding tools work in a similar way right now. After you get back this initial stream of work and you get to see what it's kind of doing, but then as it completes tasks, you get to actually steer it, which is even more powerful. But what does it actually look like when one of these agents has gotten a lot of work done? Before we had the logs interface, right? And now in addition, there's also the preview interface. So I can see exactly what I asked for and here it is. And I can now take a look, and without having to spend the time for me to go hand code that, I can take a glance and see, okay, does that actually improve things or not? Is that better? Do I like it or not? I can tab here between the various versions. I can get a summary, and you can even get notes back from the agent. The cool thing is that I can ask for follow-up changes here, or then I can say, hey, this actually looks great. Let's create the PR. And of course, once I create the PR, then we're into CI/CD automation territory. And so my CI/CD pipeline in GitHub, orchestrated via GitHub Actions, can do a ton of heavy lifting for me in addition, right? It can do security scanning for dependency vulnerabilities using Sneak. It can do lints and builds and make sure that everything is looking good. Speed requires safety. So in order to go quickly across a wide array of different PRs, we need the proper harness in place so that our CI/CD pipeline is putting our code through the paces. And this is how we're able to achieve getting multiple agents work on tasks in the background and still maintain sanity and still maintain quality in our pipeline. Okay, so let's imagine that I found a version I do like and I'm reviewing the code. This all looks solid. And now I'm ready to have my agent open the PR for me. And so you can see Codex does a nice job of adding a summary and even talking about testing and mentions what was done in this PR. And I think we can all agree this is a more complete PR description than most human authors would write, especially if they're doing 15 of them in the morning. In my mind, this is really about building a hardened CI/CD pipeline to ensure that every code change you make flows through all the same rigorous checks, right? You can see that I've got dependency scanning set up. I've got a bug bot running. Cursor can actually look for vulnerabilities and insecure coding practices. In addition, I have Git Guardian, and we'll look at that more in depth when we do this focused cursor development here next. But even at the CI/CD level, I'm also scanning to ensure that I didn't accidentally commit a secret, and I'd get alerts that would fail the build. You can see that once you've got a hardened CI/CD pipeline, this is what allows you to rapid fire requests for pull requests and changes via background agents. So the types of tasks that we feel confident that an LLM could one-shot successfully, those are all kind of cooking in the background now. And now I'm freed up to do focused feature development in Cursor, again, using my voice. Cursor is built on top of VS Code, and it'll be familiar to anyone that's used the full IDE before. So even though I still primarily code with my voice when I'm using Cursor, I still have access to all of the underlying IDE tools for refactoring and symbols and etc. I want to show you a couple of the things I've figured out that work well for me while working with Cursor. The first is going to be a focus on how I use Git. What I've found works well for me is keeping my Git branches clean. So I'll fork a new feature branch off of main, and then I'll describe with my voice in very specific detail exactly what I want built and how. And I'll sit there and actually review file by file, review the code as the Cursor agent builds it out. I'll iterate and request any changes I need to make. Then I'll keep that branch specific to that feature. I find that as long as I'm not going much deeper beyond a particular feature that I can comprehensively describe in an agent window, I have a higher chance of success with code generation. One of the tools I find absolutely indispensable before the advent of Gen AI, and especially now, is Git Guardian. Anytime if I attempt to commit a secret that's actually in my source code, as it is here, Git Guardian runs using the pre-commit hook. So every time before a commit is made, it scans all of the files that are staged to see if there's an actual secret. And if a secret is recognized, it's flagged here, and the commit is prevented. I don't create the commit with the secret in it. And then you saw previously how I showed that it is also running at the CI/CD level. So in my preview modes or all the builds that make it off of my laptop and into GitHub, they're also looking for secrets as well. It's defense in depth, but you'll just hear me repeating this over and over again. Speed requires safety. So do the work up front to put the guardrails in place that are going to save you later, especially as you increase your velocity, especially as you start getting comfortable using multiple agents and coding with your voice and using agentic coding tools. We go to look at the file that Git Guardian flagged for us. We can see that, in fact, we do have a contrived example, but a hard-coded token in our API route, which is definitely not going to do. And now for something more fun, let me show you how I actually work with Cursor day to day when I'm coding with my voice and reviewing everything that the Cursor agent is doing. So I'll just take the same example of wanting to build a new experience so that the particular pages on my site, I can say, this requires that you sign in with your email, essentially, or just prove that you have that email and sign in, and then you can use the experience in the app. And if you're not signed in, then you're prompted to sign in. So I'll just, use my Wispr Flow as before, and I'll say, /demos, we have 3 different demos that are machine learning AI focused. I want to do an experiment where we build in this concept of a page requiring you to sign in with your email. Find the existing newsletter component that we have and the newsletter wrapper that allows it to be used, and then extend it so that it has a clear state when the user is not signed in, and make it clear in the component itself that the user needs to provide their email and sign up in order to access the page. And once they've, provided their email and they've signed in, then the whole experience becomes available. I'll review this and consider, is this enough context for the agent to get started successfully? I have referenced some code here. I can say, just to show off the file capabilities, I want you to use the newsletter.tsx and the newsletter wrapper.tsx and modify those particular files to build this experience. Okay, and then I'll fire off a command, and a similar UX to using something like an agentic coding platform like Codex. But in case you haven't seen this before, this is just Cursor's own internal. This is Cursor's own native agent panel. You can see that the agent, first plans out the to-dos, and now it's going to step through each item. I can see what it's, reading, and then file changes that it made, or deletions, additions, and kind of follow along. And then the other thing I like to do here is just run the dev server locally myself. And I'll just kind of follow along and verify everything that the agent's building as we go. And I'll provide feedback in a running loop. I want to show you how the voice interaction works really, really well with this concept of queuing. So even though Cursor's agent is still working right now, I can give it additional tasks. I can say, oh, and by the way, I want you to give that page a facelift and turn everything really, really blue, different shades of blue. And, I'll have that entered in here, and I can actually fire this off as a queued message, and it will not interrupt the agents from making progress. So it's still, running a build to verify its own work as I've instructed it to in my Cursor rules and files. But you can see here, I can follow along with how far it is on its to-dos list. And then once it's done with that, I'll see it has my message queued. And so this is another excellent way to compress down the development space rapidly with rapid iteration, because I can sit here and follow along on the side and, look at my demos page and say, hey, this looks terrible, or hey, by the way, 500 error. And I can just fire on additional messages here and queue them. There's even clever ways to use MCP so that the cursor agent can load that page and use Puppeteer or Chromium to see the same things and interact with the same things that I'm interacting with. And so it saves yet another loop of me needing to say, hey, the CSS is broken. And then just as expected, once the agent completed the task that was already on, it then got my queued message, which says blue facelift, essentially. And it implemented that, and it showed me the exact colors it used. I'm using Tailwind CSS, so it showed me the exact classes it applied and roughly how it thought about form styling. There's also this new improved agent panel that just came online today, or just came online recently. And so there's multiple ways to review this. And then just as with the agentic coding tools, then you can make follow-up requests via chat and refine this. And this is what makes for a very powerful loop where I'm constantly testing and verifying functionality. I'm queuing up messages to cursor, and then I'm letting the agents code alongside. And then I also separately had background agents working, right? And so this is kind of the orchestrator pattern that people has kind of speculated about or mentioned with that's available to us now as developers with these AI tools. And so I can come here and I can see that, yeah, that's a lot of blue, and I don't love the way it looks right now, but that's roughly what I asked for, essentially. And, it's on the demos page, and I'm not able to see the demos. And so I presume that I'm not able to see the demos. So this is, roughly what I was asking for. But this is a piece of that rapid prototyping where, we could sit down here. I could write this code myself, as could you. It would just take longer to get to the point to realize that, oh, I don't quite like the way the styling is. And actually, I want this to work in a slightly different way. But I've, quickly arrived at that exploration and understanding more rapidly without having to spend, 3.5 hours typing everything in.
Now that I've delegated tasks to agents, they'll take some time chewing through them. I could sit here in my office and keep refreshing the screen or getting distracted by Slack messages. The key thing that I want to achieve here is absolute cognitive isolation. There's no other screens distracting me. There's no colleagues or family members vying for my attention, but I can actually think about what I'm trying to think about.
Okay, so let's talk about PyTorch. I'm excited to circle back to this topic, and I actually want to talk about it in the context of the Open Neural Network Exchange, or ONNX, or ONNX, if you're aware of that. Let's talk about the PyTorch's native support for ONNX.
Absolutely. Let's dive into it. So PyTorch and ONNX definitely have a pretty neat relationship. ONNX is kind of like this bridge format that lets you take a model you built in PyTorch and make it more interoperable with other frameworks or run it in different environments. So PyTorch has this native support where you can export a model directly into ONNX format. And once you do that, you can basically run it on any ONNX compatible runtime. So yeah, let's unpack that a bit more, and feel free to jump in with any specific angles you want to cover.
So this project, the Open Neural Network Exchange, it basically, it's super cool. I want to get deeper into it, but it's almost like it has to define an abstract syntax tree for all the operations that a neural net could essentially take, or the various architectures, so that all the different projects and frameworks can describe them in a uniform format. Is that roughly correct?
Yeah, you're spot on. That's a great way to think about ONNX. It's essentially like having this universal language, or this abstract syntax tree, like you said, that different frameworks can agree on. So if you define a neural network in PyTorch, you can convert it into ONNX, and then other tools or frameworks can load that same model and know exactly what to do with it. So it's really about that interoperability and making sure that these models can be used across different ecosystems. And that's what makes it super powerful.
Let's talk about the history of the project. I want to go deeper on how it. I wanted to talk about certain patterns that I keep seeing emerging in like common agentic coding platforms, such as Codex or Cursor background agents, or Google Jules or Google Copilot at this point. It looks like they're all spinning up containers at runtime, which makes sense. They're probably VMs under the hood, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really interesting pattern to notice, and you're right on the money. They often do spin up containers or VMs to run these agentic coding tasks.
Why did my coworkers say that shit to me last week?
Oh man, sometimes coworkers just have a way of saying the weirdest things, right? I have no idea what this said, but I'm pretty sure there's a story there. And hey, I'm all ears if you want to share, but I promise I'm not secretly holding out on you or anything.
Let's talk through the architecture of this permission system that I want to create. So one of my favorite things about being a developer is that I get to learn constantly. Perhaps my favorite place to learn about new things or to go deep on concepts is just out here in the woods. Right now, I tend to use OpenAI's advanced voice mode. The reason that that's such an effective tool for me is that it's a full LLM with all the training data with a voice interface on it. That means I don't need a keyboard to ask it literally anything about machine learning concepts or math that I want to learn, or to confirm my technical understanding of something, or to ask it if I have something quite right. I can just ask. It's kind of like having a conversation with Wikipedia. This is my lunch break as well as a working lunch. If I'm going to be out here for, let's say, 2.5 hours, I'll probably spend the first hour and a half just talking about a new concept that I want to learn, or talking about or doing a technical refresher on something that's going to become relevant soon, optimizations or caching or various algorithms. Or I will literally just go like this, wear my headphones, have my phone in my pocket with ChatGPT and advanced voice mode, and there's other tools, and I'm sure other tools are coming soon. And I just go for a walk and I ask it questions and I talk to it and I say, hey, I believe that X and Y are true about Z. Is that correct or not? And exactly where do I have it wrong? And I find that this is such a powerful interface because as a technical expert, I already kind of know what I know, and I also know what I don't know. And so if you think about an old school web search as kind of a very coarse-grained filter, with voice interface and LLMs in the stack, now what you can do is say, I already know X, Y, and Z, and I want you to frame this specifically through this perspective because I'm trying to do this. Another reason that I love doing what I do for a living is that a lot of times the work is thinking work, and it's thinking about the correct way to do something given all of the constraints, right, to reach some goal. Kind of thread the needle between everything from business requirements to random stakeholder asks, but that requires doing some research and having a survey knowledge of what's available and the implementations and knowledge work. And so that knowledge work can be done, I would argue, in a more effective way if you get up and walk around. We've all read about the two modes of thinking, right, or the shower principle, where you have focus mode, where you're deep in thought on something and you're highly concentrated. You have like a single point in mind. But it can also lead to tunnel vision. And then diffuse mode thinking, which is activated for a lot of us when we go step back from something, take a shower, say I'm going to take a break and walk the dog, right? It's always when you're walking the dog or you're in the shower that the solution arrives to you full formed, right? And I definitely experienced that as well by doing a lot of this kind of thinking and learning and talking and co-authoring things out in the woods. Now, assuming that I've been careful about the way I've been managing my context during the morning working session, I can not only learn about whatever topic I want while I'm out here, I can also switch gears and then carry the project forward, even though I'm away from a keyboard. And the way that I do that is I'll keep tab of the major kind of architectural decisions that still need to be made, trying to figure out what's stage appropriate for the point that I'm at in the project. And I'll quickly summarize, okay, here's what I got done this morning. Here's what remains to be done. These are the decisions that we need to make while I'm out on this trail. So your job is to help me make those decisions. We're going to have a healthy debate, talk about the pros and cons of each, and we're going to record the decisions that we come to. So I come out here, I get my walk in, and then at the end, when I come home, I copy the transcript out of ChatGPT and paste that into Cursor or Claude Desktop, whichever has the best project context, and I continue that way, and I've lost absolutely no time. But I've gotten 2 hours away from my desk and I'm full of sunlight and oxygen. The other great thing about these agentic coding tools is that they allow you to check in on your work from anywhere and see how it's going and also nudge it along. So I still get the full preview here. I still get the full diff. I still get the full diff. I can review all the changes that were made. I can comment on them and ask for changes too and say, oh, that's not quite what I wanted. I can review the various versions, figure out which I think actually works best. And so, and this is one of the ways in which I'll keep tabs on things and keep making forward progress even from the trail.
I'm back from the trail. I'm nice and relaxed. And now I'm going to take the transcript that I've just built up in my conversation with ChatGPT Advanced Voice Mode and dump it to Claude, in addition to some of my own editorialization. And I'm going to go take a shower, and I'm going to let Claude turn all of that into linear tickets that I'll review. All right, folks, so there you have it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that you were able to take away some ideas or some thoughts or perhaps some experiments that you might try in your own workflow. And in general, I would just encourage you to experiment with different things, pick up new tools, try them out, see if you can get something working. You'd be surprised how far you can take the current generation of tools. In the future, I expect that we'll see devices specifically built for this purpose of helping you get work done away from the office or wherever you are. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all online.